At a nearly empty grocery store just before dawn, a trembling grandmother tried to pay for her groceries with nothing but a handful of coins. The young cashier laughed, loud enough for everyone to hear, and scattered her change across the floor as strangers recorded her humiliation. But just as the first tear fell, the deep growl of a black SUV echoed outside. A man stepped out, calm, powerful, familiar. No one knew who he was, but what happened next turned the entire town upside down. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The store was nearly empty when the old woman shuffled in, her frail hands clutching a worn-out purse that jingled faintly, like a memory too old to matter. The kind of sound that made people glance but never care. And behind the counter, the young cashier smirked as the bell above the door gave a tired ring. Already irritated that someone dared interrupt his scrolling, his music, his boredom. The fluorescent lights flickered above them, buzzing like flies over something forgotten, and when the grandmother laid down her bread, milk, and a few canned goods, the boy snapped his gum and said, "That'll be $22.50, with the flat arrogance of someone who believed customer service was beneath him. Her hands trembled as she unzipped the purse and began counting the coins, each one clinking on the counter like tiny apologies. Dimes, nickels, pennies, quarters. Her fingers fumbled, her eyes squinted, the tremor in her wrists betraying her age and shame. Behind her, a couple waiting in line sighed loudly, one whispering something cruel about people like her wasting everyone's time. The boy leaned forward, his voice louder now, cutting the air like a blade. "Ma'am, we don't run a bank here." "You can't just dump your piggy bank on the counter." The laughter from the line came sharp and small, and she froze, blinking fast, murmuring that her pension hadn't arrived, that she only needed enough food for the week. "Then maybe you should stay home if you can't afford it," he sneered, pushing her coins aside with the back of his hand, scattering them across the counter so they rolled and fell onto the floor, tinkling like broken dignity. She gasped softly and bent down, knees cracking as she tried to gather them, her fragile body folding under the weight of embarrassment while the line behind her grew restless, phones raised, some filming, some mocking, none helping. The boy's smirk widened, satisfied, as if cruelty gave him power, as if humiliating weakness somehow proved his own strength, and he said, "We don't have all day, Granny." Just as a low rumble echoed from outside, the deep, deliberate purr of an engine that didn't belong to this quiet corner store. The sound grew louder, closer, until even the laughter stopped. The automatic doors slid open again, and cold dawn air swept in, carrying dust and silence with it. And then came the car, black, sleek, too clean for this part of town. A black SUV that rolled to a stop just outside the window. The cashier's jaw tensed as tinted windows reflected his face back at him, distorted and small. The grandmother straightened slowly, clutching her coins to her chest, unsure whether to flee or freeze. The SUV's engine died, and the door opened with a heavy click, followed by Boots stepping out, measured, calm, and echoing authority. A tall man in a dark coat stepped in, his eyes scanning the room once, pausing on the grandmother, then on the boy behind the counter. "Everything okay here?" His voice low, controlled, but with a weight that made the air shift. The boy straightened, forcing a grin. "Yeah, just fine, sir. Just helping this lady out." The man's eyes drifted to the coins scattered on the floor. "Helping her, huh?" His tone didn't rise, but something in it made the customers inch back. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a roll of $100 bills, and laid one on the counter. "How much does she owe?" The boy stammered, "$22.50. But the man didn't break eye contact as he peeled off another bill and another, stacking them slowly until the pile looked absurd next to the trembling coins. "And this," he said, his voice turning colder, "is for the disrespect." The cashier blinked. "Sir, I didn't—" "Don't lie," the man interrupted, stepping closer. His presence was calm but coiled, the kind of calm that comes before storms. "You humiliated her." "For what? Coins? You ever been hungry enough to count your dignity in spare change?" The store was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator at the back. The old woman stood frozen, tears glimmering but refusing to fall. "Pick them up," the man said quietly. "Every single one." The boy hesitated, then bent down, his trembling hands sweeping the cold floor for the coins he'd mocked minutes ago. The camera phones now filming him instead. "Apologize," the man added. The boy looked up, his face pale. "I'm sorry, ma'am." The grandmother nodded faintly, her lips trembling not from weakness, but from the shock of being defended. The man turned to her, his expression softening. "Let's get you home." "You don't have to," she began, but he shook his head. "You already paid more than enough." As they stepped outside, the sky was breaking open into gold and gray, the kind of light that feels like forgiveness. He opened the SUV door for her, and she hesitated, staring at her reflection in the glossy paint. "Do I know you?" she asked softly. He smiled faintly, a sadness flickering through his eyes. "You used to, a long time ago." Her breath caught, memory tugging at something deep. A little boy once standing behind a counter of a corner store years ago, hungry, dirty, begging for a loaf of bread, while the woman running the store had quietly slipped it into a paper bag and said, "Pay me when you can." The grandmother's lips parted as the realization dawned. "You are that boy." He nodded. "You taught me kindness when the world didn't. I just returned the lesson." The car door shut gently, the sound final, and the SUV pulled away slowly, leaving the crowd in stunned silence, leaving the boy kneeling on the floor surrounded by coins that now felt heavier than gold. Inside the SUV, the grandmother sat quietly, her hands still trembling. But now it wasn't from fear, it was from gratitude, from the shock of being seen after years of invisibility. "You didn't have to embarrass him," she whispered. The man's gaze stayed on the road. "Sometimes people only learn when they're made to feel what they made others feel." She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "You've done well for yourself." He chuckled softly. "You gave me my start. You gave me hope when I had nothing." The town passed by in silence. The same streets that once watched him starve now, watching him return as something untouchable, armored not by money, but by purpose. The grandmother turned to him, voice breaking. "What happened to your parents?" His eyes darkened. "Gone, both. That day you gave me bread was the day I buried the last of them." She reached out, laying her fragile hand over his. "I'm sorry, son." He looked at her, his jaw tightening. "You were the only one who wasn't." They drove on until they reached a small house at the edge of town. A sagging roof, peeling paint, a mailbox that leaned like it was tired. "This is you?" he asked gently. She nodded, embarrassed. "It's what I could afford." He stepped out, motioning for her to wait, then opened the trunk and pulled out a small envelope, placing it in her lap. "What's this?" she asked. "Security," he said, "so you never have to count coins again." She tried to protest. But when she opened it, tears spilled freely. Inside was a deed, her name printed clearly underlined by ownership of a new home near the city, mortgage-free. "I can't take this," she whispered. "You can," he replied softly, "because years ago, you gave me what no one else would. Dignity." She covered her face, sobbing quietly, the sound soft, but full of release. "Why me?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Because when the world paid me back, I remembered who loaned me kindness first." He turned to leave, but she grabbed his sleeve weakly. "At least tell me your name." He looked at her, eyes glistening under the dawn light. "You called me child when no one else did." "That's all I needed." He walked away, the SUV engine roaring back to life, and she watched him disappear down the road, the morning sun stretching over the horizon, bathing everything in gold. Back at the store, word spread like wildfire. Videos uploaded, hashtags flooding, and soon the boy behind the counter found himself jobless, his smirk replaced by silence, his arrogance eaten by shame. The store owner issued a public apology, but the internet had already judged him guilty. And yet the story didn't end in revenge. It ended in memory, in a lesson whispered through every share and every comment. Kindness never dies. It waits. The grandmother's life quietly changed after that morning. Neighbors who once ignored her now waved, offered rides, brought flowers. The coins she used to count for groceries now sat in a jar by her window labeled Mercy Fund, and every month she filled it with change, delivering it to families struggling more than she ever did. Sometimes, at dawn, she'd hear the hum of a black SUV passing down her street, never stopping, never lingering, but she'd smile through her tears, whispering a prayer for the boy who became her miracle. And somewhere out there, the man who once starved in silence carried her lesson into boardrooms, contracts, and cities, building not just wealth, but a legacy of quiet retribution wrapped in compassion, never forgetting the trembling hands that once taught him what humanity looked like when the world had none left to spare.